Hello and welcome to an interview with the IHSCM's series of interviews with authors and writers whose work is not only influential to social care, but the development of the leadership and the management skills of everyone working in our workforce. I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by Liggy Webb. Now, Liggy is an award-winning, best-selling author, presenter, keynote speaker, international consultant specializing in life skills. And on top of all of this is also founder and director, CEO of Learning Architect. Now, I'm going to welcome Liggy in.
Hi, hello.
Hello, Liggy. How are you?
I'm really well, thank you. I'm very excited to be here to chat to you today. So thank you for inviting me.
No, you're most welcome. Now, Liggy, for those who don't know, you've not written, one book or two books. Is it 30 books that you've now got that you've published?
Well, I've actually written 35 books now. So 5 bigger books, and then I've also written a series of bite-sized books, and there's 30 in total in there. So 35 books.
Absolutely fantastic. And we'll go to those books in a minute, because some of these are like time management and burnout, and I don't know, maybe those books help you with all this work that you're doing. It's such an amazing resume here. So what's your journey? How have you got to where you are today?
Oh gosh, well, do you know, it's interesting. I'll tell you a little story here. My mother was clearing out some stuff at home, and she found this great big case with lots of little notebooks, because I always used to carry around little notebooks, and I was forever interviewing people, and I was absolutely obsessed with, what makes people happy, what motivates people. So we found these little books, and there was one book, and it had got, I think I'd written this when I was about 10, and it had got what are my ambitions? And I actually had 4 ambitions. One was to own a coffee shop. The other one was to write a book. The third one was to have a dating agency. And the fourth one was to own a shares in Marks and Spencer's. So that's what I wanted to do, apparently, when I was younger. But I have actually owned a coffee shop at one point. And in a way, I have had a bit of a dating agency, because I used to hold this sort of like singles mingles at my coffee shop. But then I really kind of pursued writing. I've actually started a writing group as well in my hometown of Cheltenham. But my background is in learning and development. So I'm a behavioural skills specialist. So I've worked with lots of different organisations, and it's given me the opportunity to meet people from all over the world, from lots of different backgrounds. And I'm very passionate about researching and distilling the complexity around that research and producing really down to earth and very pragmatic content. So that's what my books are all about, really. But I thought I'd share that little anecdote with you as well, Adam.
I think that's fantastic. I'd never dream of owning a dating agency, so I think that's an amazing shares in Marks and Spencers. Maybe we'd be doing quite well nowadays if that was the case. Now you touched upon the organisations you've worked with, many organisations. So again, I'm going to be name dropping here because I'm a little bit starstruck being in your presence. So we've got obviously the NHS. You've worked with the NHS. You've worked with the BBC, which is fantastic. Disney. I mean, what? And the United Nations. This portfolio, this portfolio of organizations you've worked with is so vast and so different. How have you managed to do that? And are there differences between these organizations and your approach to what you do? Or do you find that actually your life skills and the things you teach are relevant across all sectors?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because it is a very diverse client base that I work with. And I'm really proud of the fact that it is quite eclectic, because it gives you a chance to really understand what's going on with people from lots of different backgrounds. Certainly working with the United Nations has been really interesting. I've worked with the UN for about 15 years now. So I've spent time out in some of the peace missions, some of the war zones as well. So I've spent time out in Kabul, in Afghanistan, and in Beirut, and in Cambodia. I worked in the middle of the killing fields in Cambodia, which I have to say was very, very challenging. Working for the BBC has been really interesting. they did actually film the first book that I wrote, which is called Resilience: How to Cope When Everything Around You Keeps Changing. We actually filmed a mini series for the BBC World Service, so that was a really interesting experience. And certainly working with the NHS and the care sector, I have to say, for me, that's an absolute honour. It really is, because the people that I work with, who are just incredible individuals in terms of the work that they do, I learn so much from them in terms of resilience and in terms of, you know, all the different things that we need to help us to be able to thrive and to be able to really look after ourselves. So it's a constant education, I have to say.
I mean, I suppose the time sort of, well, it's always timely to talk about resilience and mental health and well-being within health and social care. But these last 2 years really have, you know, shone a focus on the health and social care sector. The books you've got, with the ones that I've got in front of me, I mean, are all absolutely fantastic. But there's so many of them. How do you decide on the topics, the titles, the content? Do you sit there and go, actually, I want to talk about this? Or is there a research phase behind it?
Oh, absolutely. There's a research phase. I think what underpins all of the titles that I've written about is human resilience. Because when I was writing my first book on human resilience, I had a chance to do lots of scientific research, but also to interview people from all over the world and lots of different backgrounds to identify, you know, what is it that really helps people to be resilient, to be able to bounce back from adversity and be able to, you know, rise to the challenges that life presents us with. And one thing I learned about human resilience is that it's multifaceted. There are so many different aspects to it. So I think in many ways, that for me was the real catalyst for exploring some of these different topics. And then what I tend to do is, once I've identified a topic that I feel is really important and really pertinent for the time that we're living in, I go down a bit of a rabbit hole of research. I love research. But then what I do is I distill a lot of complexity and really translate it into very plain speaking language. I also like my books to be uplifting. I think it's really important in a world where we can experience information anxiety. You know, we can feel it's coming at us from all angles. So to create content that's uplifting and fun as well. I use a lot of quotes because I think there's a huge amount of wisdom out there. And what I like to do is to be able to collect, if you like, different perspectives on subjects as well. So that's really the kind of pathway that I go through when I'm writing my books. And I have to say, Adam, it's actually more challenging to write a small book than it is to write a bigger book, because when you're writing a big book, you can put all the information in there. But when you're writing smaller books, you've really got to be very selective as well. And sometimes that can be quite challenging. And then I usually end up with surplus information that I think, actually, I think that would make another book on a different subject as well. So that's how I've kind of gone through this process. And I work a lot with colour. I really love to have bright, uplifting colours. So you can probably see, looking at the background in my office here, there's lots of different colours there as well.
Well, I will say, I mean, your books pretty much make up the rainbow and then some afterwards. I think they're absolutely fantastic. And I mean, I know what you're saying. These are really, I don't have to do that so you can see them, really handy little pocket guides. And, you know, forgive me for calling that if it's offensive, but they are great. You know, fit straight in your pocket, take them out. And the information is so condensed that there's nothing superfluous there. There's nothing, you know, and I'm trying to flick through a chapter. Each chapter is just full of everything that you absolutely need to know. And what really helps on the one, well, some of the ones that I've read, is you put the reference links at the back for websites and additional information that people can then go and outsource. They are really fun to read. You know, the images do break it up. It, you know, releases, you know, that serotonin, the endorphins in your brain when you're reading them. And it isn't just like a black and white page that you're going down. I think the quotes are fantastic, and I know you're saying that you use other people's quotes in them, and you know it's inspirational. One of my favorites, and in fact, I gave one of the books to my other half to have a flick through and go, you know, what do you think about this? And he came to me and he underlined it and he said, kindness combats loneliness. And I thought, oh, that's wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful. And I think in the times that we've been living in recently, and the experiences not only of those working in social care, but living and drawing on social care services, it really is true. You know, kindness does combat loneliness. Do you think the pandemic has shone a light on the mental health and well-being of our teams? You know, we all know it's always been there and there's always been problems, but do you think the pandemic has done anything to push it into the limelight?
I certainly do. I mean, I must admit, the whole area of well-being has been an absolute passion of mine for the best part of the last 3 decades. And sometimes within organisations, it hasn't always been seen as a priority. You know, some organizations don't see it as a solid business investment when it very clearly is. And I think putting people at the heart of your organization is the most important thing that we can do. You know, we're living in what can be sometimes a bit of an inhuman world. So keeping things very human centric is so important and so powerful. So I certainly think that if there's any benefits for this incredibly challenging time that we've been through, is that it has actually put well-being center stage, and it's getting people to sit up and notice a little bit more on how important it really is. So certainly, I just hope that as we move through the pandemic, we keep that momentum going around well-being. I think that is so important because people are exhausted. I'm noticing so many more people are at that point of burnout, and the world is challenging. You know, you just look around you at everything that's going on. You know, we're being bombarded all the time with negative imagery. You know, there's a lot of self-comparison. There's all sorts of different things that are going on that present us with some of those things that can put us under a lot of pressure. It can raise our stress levels. So prioritizing self-care is so important. It is about giving the world the best of you, not what's left of you. That's a quote, by the way, by Katie Reed. That's in one of my books, but I love that quote because I think that's really, really important. We deserve to live the best possible lives that we can, and there are so many things that we can do to help us to be able to do that.
I mean, you bring up a really, really important point there, and it's a point I similarly make around community. So community will always rally round in a crisis. You know, they'll print PPE and deliver food. But once that crisis goes, what we tend to find is that support and interest peters off and sort of disappears because it's no longer the focus. So I don't know whether you've got an answer to this, whether you've got any suggestions. How do we keep mental health and well-being a focus now moving forwards? What would your suggestion be?
I think for every organization to prioritize it, you know, to make sure that they do keep that momentum. But I also think that more encouragement for self-directed learning is really key, because ultimately we need to be able to equip ourselves so that we can take personal responsibility, because we're the only ones that know, you know, how far our stress levels are rising, you know, what's going on in our lives, how well we're balancing and juggling all the different things that we've got to do. So I think having more resources made available for people to be able to access, to have more open conversations. I think empathy, compassionate leadership within the workplace is absolutely essential as well, and treating every single person as an individual. You know, there's no blanket approach and no one size fits all when it comes to well-being. You know, it's really understanding what each unique individual needs. So I think certainly the role of the manager is very important, and empathetic leadership and compassionate leadership is vital.
I completely agree. If only somebody had written a ton of books that actually cover all of this already, you know. So they are, and I said this to you before we went into the interview, they are perfect to have in a team room, in your offices, or, you know, around for everybody to just flick in and read and take something away from it. But also to help educate ourselves and to remind ourselves, you know, if we're having a bit of a tough day and you just think, oh, that, you know, the team are really doing my head in today and I just can't cope and what have you. I'll flick through the empathy book. Oh, actually, maybe I need to be a bit more like this. Maybe I should be understanding more. Maybe I should be seeing things from a different perspective. And they are there as really good sort of prompts for beneficial leadership. I was reading one around sleep. And the one thing I loved is I'm rewatching a TV show at this moment in time, and two of the main characters in it are advertising execs, and they're up until 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and they're doing their pitches, and they get a phone call, and it's like, no, we need to change the pitch, and they work through the night, and the success is measured by how long they've been working during that day. So they'll work through the day, and then they'll work through the night, and they're really, really successful. And the one thing I like in your sleep book is you say that we're human beings, not human doings. And that, I think it's great, honestly. There's so much to take away from these books. And I think there has to be something about where we go no. It's always nice to say yes, but it's learning to say no. So what advice do you have for people who might feel, because in social care, we are compassionate and we do want to do the most. So it is hard to say no, but what advice do you have to people to go, actually, you need to take this time and it isn't about working as many hours in a 24-hour period?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've just posted a blog on my website around self-pressure, because I think we can get into some, habits where we don't always prioritize our own well-being. Perhaps we experience compassion fatigue. I see that a lot. We end up saying yes to everybody else, which sometimes means saying no to ourselves, and then we feel a bit resentful, and that can be quite stressful in itself. So I think learning to really understand the importance of self-care, because when we prioritize our well-being, when we look after ourselves, when we fill our own pot to overflowing, that's one of the best things that we can do for other people. If we're firing on all cylinders and we're feeling well, then that's a really good example to set for other people as well. We are only human. We have so much energy, and we need to be kind of mindful of that. So creating some really healthy boundaries, because boundaries are a sign of self-respect. And if you don't respect your boundaries, then why should you expect anybody else to? So I think it's, really working out what works for you, raising your own self-awareness around, what energizes you and what depletes you is a really good thing to do. In fact, I did an exercise the other day. I could feel my stress levels really rising. So I just took some time and I sat back with a pen and paper. I drew a line and I just wrote down, what actually depletes my energy right now, and what actually energizes me and just gives me a little bit of a buzz. And it was a really useful exercise to just take that time to stop and reflect, because if we keep going, we're going to get exhausted. There is a quote again in one of the books, and my favorite quote actually, and it's a quote from my dad. And my dad always says, great bit of advice: if you want to go a bit faster, slow down. And I think that is a really, really good bit of advice, because we're all running at breakneck speed, but we have to remember that we are human beings, not human doings. Absolutely. So thanks for asking that question, Adam.
No, I think it's fantastic. And, I know that we want to sit and talk about your books and your achievements and everything, but there's also a conversation to be had around, if we can learn our own barriers and our own limitations and understand our own self-worth and investment within ourselves, then it will also allow us to understand not to ask too much of other people. Because if we sit there and think, would I want to do that? No. So why am I asking someone at 7 o'clock in the evening to continue doing something? And, if we look within, it just helps us to then look outwards, doesn't it? I think it's absolutely fantastic. I'm going to ask you a question now, and if you don't have an answer, you don't have an answer. Which is your favorite book of your pocket-sized books? Which is your favorite?
Oh gosh, somebody asked me that the other day. Do it changes. It depends, I suppose, what your sort of needs are. But I suppose, oh gosh, I think probably my favorite book is Resilience, because that is the one topic that I'm just so passionate about. So I think if I was absolutely pushed to choose one book, it would be Resilience.
Now, obviously, all your books can be found at your website, www.liggywebb.com. That is going across on the bottom. So if anyone's sat here listening, go and buy the Resilience book, I would buy the full pack if I was you, because all of them are absolutely wonderful. Now, award-winning, and I believe this was a Training Journal award, awarded at the Tower of London, no less. So, tell us about that. That sounds fantastic.
Oh, it was such an incredible moment. So I was nominated for a Special Achievement Award and invited to go to the Tower of London for the awards. And I must admit, I did not think I was going to win. So when they actually announced my name, apparently I just sat there and my husband was kind of nudging me saying, go up, go up. So yeah, and it was a Special Achievement Award for the work that I've done through the years to be an advocate for mental health and workplace well-being. So really kind of like championing the importance of being able to prioritize well-being and make it, something that's very important for every organization to really be thinking about and doing something about as well. So that's very exciting. In fact, here we go. It's just by my side. That was my award. Yeah, I'm so proud of that.
Oh no, that's fantastic.
I didn't slap anyone either. Just had to get that joke in there.
Honestly, that fantastic, and a huge congratulations on that.
Thank
I
you.
think it's well deserved. So, if I'm going to be purchasing your books, I've never read them before, and I've just happened to come across them because of this interview or the website or your social media posts, which, by the way, you're very active on LinkedIn, and I love seeing your posts go up on LinkedIn, because it's usually at a time where I go on social media and I think, oh gosh, I'm absolutely shattered today, and a Liggy Webb post pops up and I just go, oh, boost the serotonin, cheers me up. So I'm just discovering your books now. What can I expect to get from them? I buy them, they arrive, I read them. What are going to be my main takeaways?
Well, thank you very much for saying that about the post. That's really nice to hear, Adam. I guess in terms of what you'll get from the books, they're easy and accessible. So I think what they do is they help you to understand, to take a topic and to really understand and define what that is all about, to be really clear about the benefits of being able to embrace whatever kind of topic or behavior it is. And then most important of all, some really practical steps of things that you can do, because there's a lot of things we know, but the real wisdom is what we actually do with it, the practical application. That's what really counts. So there's some very practical steps that you can take with them as well. And hopefully they'll make you smile too. Lift, as you say, a little bit of a boost too, a bit of a mood boost. I think that's really important.
Yeah, honestly, I think they are great. And, you've got, they're not activities per se, but on some of the books, there'll be list your pros and cons. And it's a case of, actually, I might do it now while I'm sat reading this book. I'll just write my list of pros and cons now, and top 3 tips. So I take those and I write those down, because I really want to take that away from these books. And the information is absolutely brilliant. So we've got 30 books. We've got 5 bigger books. You're working with umpteen organizations. What is the Learning Architect? Tell us a bit about that.
Well, so 16 years ago this year, I decided to set up my own company, and it was a passion. I'd been in learning and development. I'd worked with lots of really fantastic consultants. And what I wanted to do was to bring together a consortium of behavioural specialists. And so I've got a wonderful team, absolutely fantastic team, who've been doing lots of really great work. And that's what the Learning Architect is all about. So the reason I called it the Learning Architect is because we literally build learning solutions. So lots of kind of original content as well.
I don't know where you find the time. I honestly don't know where you find the time. What's next? You're working with Disney, so surely there's an animated series in the works coming along here. There has to be, doesn't there? There has to be. So now, what's next? Are there any more books in the pipeline?
And there's always books in the pipeline. Do you know, I really want to write a children's book on resilience. I did actually start it last year, but a few things have been going on and I haven't had a chance to really get stuck in. So I think a children's book on resilience is definitely on the cards. I think it's such an important subject. So I think that's something. And also I'm going to be getting out and about again. I've been doing lots of webinars over the last couple of years. Obviously, we've shifted more to the virtual world, but I will be getting out and about and doing lots more presentations and traveling again. And that's exciting. A whole new chapter, I think, is opening up now.
There's something about actually being in a room full of people again now, isn't there? That's, as you know, it's, I mean, it's great to meet you via webcam and what have you, but being in a room full of people who've got that similar sort of mindset, it's just like food. It's absolutely nurturing. It's fantastic. So I was just thinking, because you are so prolific in your writing and your publishing, some top tips for budding authors out there, because there's a lot of people watching this probably who are working in social care who go, actually, I'm really an expert in this field as well, and I want to try and write something. So, top 3 tips. What would you recommend for people who are starting out on an author's journey?
Oh, right. Top 3 tips. Well, first one, and one of the best bits of advice I was ever given by a writer, I was sort of saying, you know, what would be your number 1 tip? And the response was, if you want to be a writer, write. And I think that's quite profound, actually, because, you know, sometimes we have loads of ideas in our heads, but sitting down in front of a blank screen or a blank piece of paper, it's quite intimidating. But once you start to write, it's amazing how many things flow. I have actually mentored a few people who've written books, and one of the tips I give is discipline yourself to write 500 words a day. Doesn't matter if it doesn't end up in the book, but just getting yourself exercising the writing muscle, that's a really good discipline. So just 500 words a day, which is, you know, it's about a page and a half of an A4 paper. And I guess another tip is I do actually have a writing group. It's a monthly group at the moment. We're going to keep it as a hybrid group. So I live in Cheltenham, and we actually have the group in Cheltenham, but we're going to be we do it via Zoom as well. So if anybody fancies joining a writing group, have a look on my website, because there are some details, or just email me and I can tell you a little bit more about it. But if you don't join that writing group, definitely joining any writing group is a really good way to motivate yourself, because you're with like-minded people. Creativity sparks flying around is always helpful, and you get feedback as well from other writers, which is always really useful.
Great top tips. I'm going to take them away. And next time you meet me, Liggy, I'm going to be an author. No, I don't have the time. Well, maybe I need to look at your time management book, actually, and plan something out to make sure I could find the time to be an author. Look, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. All of your books will be available and linked to on our website to yours through our care library. But I do urge everybody, go and have a look at liggywebb.com. The books are absolutely fantastic. The information you get, the resources, you've got free resources on your website, I believe.
Yes, I've actually got lots of different posters. I don't know if you can see behind me, but you can actually sort of print them off into bigger size posters. And lots of organizations that I work with have wellbeing areas, so they sort of put the posters around, and then they have some of the bite-sized books, and it's just like a little zone that people can go to if they need a bit of inspiration and a bit of a pick-me-up.
Absolutely fantastic. So get yourselves over to Liggy Webb's website. That's www.liggywebb.com. Liggy, it's been absolutely fantastic talking to you. I'll catch up with you after we've finished this interview. But until then, this has been an interview with. Thank you very much for joining myself and our absolutely wonderful guest today, Liggy Webb. So take care, everybody, and goodbye.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Adam. Bye.